Hey guys, it's Albert. Welcome to my recap of Z Nation Season 2, Episode 9. This one's titled Rozwell with the Z. It doesn't actually say with the Z in the title, but now that I think about it, I kind of wish that it did, because that'd be freaking awesome. But no, they just spell it differently because it's zombies, and they're in Z Nation, and this one was a little bit of a mixed bag for me, which is not uncommon for Z Nation. I'm usually sort of like that. It was a pretty good episode, but I'm on the fence. Occasionally, that just blows me away. I guess I should start at the beginning. You start off with a really great opening sequence of a woman running away from a zombie. Bright lights appear in the sky, and the bright lights hit the zombie and like chop it into multiple pieces, and which is pretty cool special effect for Z Nation, I'll say. Leaving it like just broken on the ground, and then the bright light shines on the woman, and she just sort of gets this like beatific smile on her face, and we cut to a really great sort of opening crawl like along the asphalt of the road to Rozwell, which was I don't know, something about that opening really worked for me. Like, I don't know what it was. Very simple, but just the idea of sort of scrolling along the road and then eventually panning up and seeing our heroes and Roswell in the distance, that was just exciting. Like, that it was just like, oh, strap yourselves in and getting ready for another good episode of Z Nation, but this one's a little bit different, just like they all are. And the main episode really starts after we get past our little teaser at the beginning with our heroes headed towards Roswell. And I do gotta say, I gotta bring up, because they mentioned this a couple times, they bring it up in the intro part where they're like, previously on Z Nation, they just string a bunch of stuff together. And then they also bring it up later in the episode. They talk about the contrails in the sky as if, like, I'm a little bit concerned that they're going to the point where they're like, yes, we're going to explain away the fact that contrails exist in our shots sometimes. Yeah. And that's a thing that we need to explain away. So, UFO episode! Contrails, for those of you who don't know, are left behind by jets. A lot of people have big conspiracy theories about them, but in the world of Z Nation, the fact that they exist at all would be a conspiracy theory, because how in the world are there still jumbo jets flying around? And our heroes don't know about it. The world is falling apart. Who's servicing these things? So Sketchy had mentioned that in his long-winded, rambling speech back when he was trying to talk his way out of getting executed. And now they bring it up again later in the episode, like, where are these contrails coming from? I understand that you guys have a budget and you can't paint out every contrail, okay? We don't have to have some weird pseudo-scientific, maybe it's aliens explanation for them. I'll be okay without that. But they get to talking about Roswell and aliens, and there's the real strength of this episode is the humor, which I'm not going to say it's been missing from a lot of the episodes, but it hasn't been this strong recently in Z Nation, with sort of Murphy making fun of the idea of aliens, and he's the skeptic. He doesn't want to believe in any of that crap. He's Murphy, he's tough. And then the person who's like really believing in the aliens is 10K. And for some reason, that dynamic just tickled me pink. I love the idea that 10K, as this sort of hardcore survivalist, who's been living out in the mountains, well, of course he believes in UFOs. Like, why would they be hiding in the first place if his dad wasn't all about, like, the government's doing experiments and, taxation without representation and UFOs and like, he's obviously related to some people who, while they may be good people, are a little bit on the fringe of what it might be acceptable to believe in society. So he is very much like, oh yeah, my uncle said they had this, secret Air Force base and, all these other things. It's a recurring joke. He keeps talking about his uncle. My uncle said this, my uncle said that, my uncle. There's even a great Sasquatch line. But that sets up probably the greatest strength of this episode, which is 10K sort of believing everything and just sort of going on with this wide-eyed, innocent, like, yes, aliens, that's absolutely a thing. And Murphy being like, you're stupid. And then kind of everybody else being a little bit in the middle. Doc sort of like edging towards 10K, which again you can see because he's a stoner and he's he's a little bit crazy himself. Like he kind of thinks like, maybe it could be Murphy, you never know. But having that dynamic between Murphy and 10K, especially knowing how much they've had friction in the past and have legitimate dramatic friction, I think that is a great way to kind of bring out their differences and yet not have it be heavy and like 10K and Murphy going at it again. Like, if they're going at it again about UFOs, that's okay. But the group gets to Rozwell, as you would expect that they would by the name of the episode, and they meet up with this group of people who are like, oh, you're here for the Ascension. You know, welcome, visitors, and it's... Your first instinct here is just to panic, because you don't meet crazy people in a zombie apocalypse without them trying to kill you at some point. Like, these people have to be bad. There's no way for them not to be just, turn out, eventually get a weird smile. Oh, you won't worship the aliens with us? Then you will have to feed them with your bodies. Or something like that. And so you're immediately just like alarm bells going off like, oh no, don't stay here. Just keep moving. How have you not been enough to situations like this where you don't want to leave? Just leave, get some food and go. But they stay because that's what the writing in the episode says. And they meet this woman who is the woman from the beginning, and she's all clothed in white, and she has the blonde hair and sort of the tranquil smile and, the sort of pseudo-Jesus figure for their cult that's worshiping the UFO, saying, welcome, strangers, all, talking about how she's foreseen them. She sees Murphy and kind of gets like a psychic vibe from him, which I don't know why more people don't get a psychic vibe from Murphy, considering that he's blue. You can kind of tell that he's a little bit different from everybody else. You can say it's a skin condition as much as you want to, Murphy, but it's not a vitamin deficiency. Most people wouldn't buy that. But anyway, she does her thing, kind of bees all creepy and then leaves. And then they have, they sit down and they have a hilarious conversation around the table where, again, they're talking about their situation that they're in, about whether there might be aliens, about what they should do. And this crazy guy shows up, whose last name is Scully and whose first name I forget. It's been a little while. We did, the reason this is coming out late, by the way, is Saturday we had 24 hours of Extra Life, and then I was wiped out kind of for the next 2 days, so I didn't really want to record. So this is coming out a couple days late from when I normally put it out, and I'm sorry if you were waiting. But it's, this guy shows up. He's got like, they're all wrong. The actual aliens are inside of Pluto and it's a spaceship, and like has his sort of like alternate conspiracy theory. I think it's Dan Scully. I think that's the guy's name. Anyway, but the exciting part, the really, really thrilling part for me is that this guy was played by Doug Jones. And if you don't know who Doug Jones is, he does a lot of work with Guillermo del Toro. Any Guillermo del Toro film you'll see where there's like a full body suit puppet thing. The guy with the eyeballs from Pan's Labyrinth, that was Doug Jones. The weird eyeball thing in Hellboy 2 was Doug Jones. Abe Sapien from Hellboy and Hellboy 2 both of those were body acted by Doug Jones. In the first one, they overdubbed his voice. And in Crimson Peak, he plays most of the ghosts, if not all of them. Guillermo del Toro loves working with this guy, and the reason is because he's an incredible physical actor. He moves in a very distinctive, very powerful way that when you see it, he can creep you out with just how he moves, which is amazing. And so he pops up, and he has his sort of crazy conspiracy theories, and then he leaves, and you're like, okay, what was that about? It's just another sort of funhouse mirror craziness going on, but you kind of wonder, looking back, especially, you're like, well, what was he doing? And then sort of the white-robed woman comes back and they say, hey, we want to go find out what's going on with this Air Force base. We need some supplies. We need bullets, whatever. And she's like, oh, I know where that is. That's where I meet with the aliens. I can take you there. And she does this creepy thing where she just appears. She's just, I guess really quiet is the best explanation I could come up with for that. She just shows up and she's like, and they're like, where were you at? And she's like, I was here the whole time. And then, it does the same thing disappearing where they like look away and then they look back and she's not there anymore. She's halfway across the room or the road or whatever. So, she's kind of set up as this really spooky character. She takes them to the military base, where after a little bit of fooling around, they go down to this underground level, which the way they get down there is great. They go into this room and there's like a cigarette dispenser, like with a coin operated cigarette dispenser. I don't even know where they found one of those way back in the day, that those things were still around. But she tells, she's sitting in this chair and she tells Doc, who's looking at the cigarette, she's like, try the gum. And he's like, I don't know, I'm not much of a gum chewer myself. She says, the gum is free. Try the gum. And then buckles herself into the seat and he's like, all right. And he pushes the button, at which point the room just basically drops like a stone into the earth, which was a lot of fun. That was sort of her taking them by surprise like that was great. And under the earth, they find this, for lack of a better word, it's a base. It's this whole underground facility where stuff's been going on. And they find a big computer that's got all kinds of, it's one of those clear displays with the touch screen where you're moving stuff around and you can see through the screen to the person, which seems like it would just wreck your eyes, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I have no idea. But they have, they have all future technology and stuff, and they go down there, and the woman finds this thing that looks like an alien. And again, I can't say this definitively, but I'm 90% sure that it's Doug Jones again in both of these outfits playing these aliens. There's two aliens that show up eventually because he moves in a really, really creepy way. And, starts to, and the interesting thing is the woman isn't afraid of these weird alien creatures. She sort of just says, oh yeah, they're nice to us. Don't worry about it. And the other people are freaking out. They shoot one of them they actually shoot both of them in the head eventually because, they're menacing. And there's a great moment in the hallway where they're looking at the one alien ahead of them. And, you see them looking, and then around the corner comes another one just running at them like crazy. I mean, a moment of pure horror. Like, I was just like, ah! There it is behind you! Turn around! They couldn't hear me, obviously. They didn't turn around until later. But, they really do play with the sort of, literally, the movie, like the movie Alien, like these people sort of skulking through corridors and being haunted by these things. And of course they continue, looking things up. Addie ends up on the computer looking up information and stuff about the aliens and doesn't find out anything really conclusive. But they end up at this, sort of this giant hangar, and they find these really cool space guns, for lack of a better word, that the military had developed somehow. And 10K gets his hand on, which 10K getting his hand on like a phaser, a laser gun, just got me so excited because of like 10K has his hands on like a new technology gun. Well, he's just gonna blow everything up now. I'm sure he won't have it in the next episode, but it's exciting to see for a little bit. And they're menaced by the UFO again. The UFO again shines its light on the woman, and they're like, "Whoa, it's gonna attack!" And so they shoot down the UFO. And as it turns out, the pilot of the UFO, in one of the suits as they'd seen the guys earlier, was the character played by Doug Jones earlier, Dan Scully. And this is where the episode kind of falls apart, logically speaking. His whole thing was that, he was a pilot that had been at the military base flying the sort of secret military aircraft that they had developed there, which I did like what they did with not dismissing the idea of aliens. They ask him if it's aliens, and he's like, I don't know. That's way above my pay grade. I just fly the things. They didn't know where they got. So he doesn't know where they got the technology either. But he was in love with the woman in white, and so I guess he was pretending to be an alien so that she would love him back somehow. It's a little bit unclear how that was a good plan, but he's crazy and she's crazy, so who knows? Anyway, he had been the one behind all of the UFO things and the alien news, and he had been that was why he had protected her and chopped up the alien on the road at the beginning of the episode. Again, this is the part for me that really makes it fall apart, because narratively, from a big picture standpoint, this episode is kind of weak. They never do anything with the cult of the aliens that matters. It's like those people don't, which is, you could argue, is an interesting take for the sake of misdirection, because you do see them and you do get the idea of like, oh, these guys are going to be trouble, watch out. And then they don't end up being, but they don't actually accomplish anything for the plot. Like, you could have just had, other than the fact that she kind of needs to have followers, you could have almost just had the woman in white talking about the aliens and, mysteriously not being hurt by the zombies or whatever because the UFOs are protecting her. It felt like that some of this was a little bit padded, and the rationale for why Doug Jones's character was doing the whole alien aircraft secret Air Force hoax thing was really thin to me. Maybe I missed something and I'm just dumb, but that part of it felt kind of thin. Like, looking back, the interesting thing is the episode works really well on a moment-to-moment basis, which I think a lot of people dismiss. Sometimes a movie might hold together as a whole, sort of like everything makes sense, but it doesn't engage you moment to moment. And I think that it is impressive, and the way that this episode works is that flowing from thing to thing, you're not spending a lot of time thinking about the logic of it. It's only after you've seen it that you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't really make sense. So I'm not going to fault it too much, because I actually think that if you can, thread things together in such a way that they flow into each other, and maybe from a big picture stance don't logically make sense, but from a story stance, you have a strong story all the way through, I'm on board with that, and I'm willing to give points for that. But I think that it could have been a little stronger. Neither my favorite nor my least favorite episode of Z Nation. But again, a lot of good strengths, a lot of great humor in this, a lot of great moments of atmosphere when they're down there with the alien things that turn out to be zombie pilots, former test pilots of the aircraft, which was kind of interesting to think about because they're wearing the helmets that make them look like aliens for some reason. And that made me think, like, well, even if they are zombies, what are they going to do? They can't bite you through the helmet. But they didn't explore that, so I want to see somebody do that. Just like put a helmet on a zombie, and the zombie's like a fishbowl on a zombie's head, and he's just walking around like banging into people, not able to bite him. This show could do that. This could happen on Z Nation. But yeah, overall, again, certainly not the worst episode, not the best either, but it kind of, I will say, it does fit the aesthetic of conspiracy theories, right? Because conspiracy theories usually don't hold together that well either. They're like, they sort of make sense as the person's talking to you about them, and then when you think about all the particulars, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And I do like that they left it open. I really do like that they left it open for the possibility of aliens in this universe, even if they aren't actually aliens in this universe. The guy with the I don't know, and having Doug Jones in Z Nation, for me, he's a bigger star to me than George R.R. Martin is. I know he doesn't have the same name recognition, probably, but for them to snag him as an actor to be on their show and to do his body thing in those weird bodysuits was just incredibly exciting. So I'm really glad that they were able to get him and that he was able to add his flavor to Z Nation. And yeah, I'm looking forward. Next week we're at the Grand Canyon, with the episode title "We Were Nowhere Near the Grand Canyon," which I'm very, very excited about. But also a little bit of an in-joke because obviously they didn't go and shoot at the Grand Canyon because they're Z Nation and they've got like $5 and they shoot in Spokane, Washington. But I'm really, really looking forward to what happens next. I do hope that we start getting a few more episodes that advance the plot, either in a character sense, because this one was really filler. I know some people were talking about, you know, the one with 10K kind of on the river being filler, but, you know, you have some character development in those at least. This one I felt like, other than establishing that 10K is a huge conspiracy nut, didn't drive really much of anything forward. And I'm really wanting to advance more of this sort of core story ideas of that Z Nation's trying to develop. I want to see more of the Zetas. I want to get back to a little bit more about the number station. I mean, they set that up way in the beginning of the season, and then they're just like, yeah, we'll get to that eventually. I want to see what happens to the Citizen Z. Please. Like, I'm holding out hope for him to show up just walking on the road towards them, and they're all together now. But I'm still excited for the show, and this was another really fun episode, despite its few flaws. So tune in next week, as I will be, for episode 10, We Were Nowhere Near the Grand Canyon. Thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if you like and you want to see more, and I'll see you next week.